Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's NBA and college basketball games and look ahead to today's games in each sport. We'll preview the opening night slate of the NHL. We'll preview tonight's episode of The Masked Dancer. We'll get into the possible impeachment of the president at the end, if we have time, and my best bet of the day. All right, we'll start in the NBA as we will go over a busy slate yesterday and look ahead to today a little bit. There are some interesting results that people were not expecting. 76ers over the Heat, 137-134 in overtime. The Sixers, 8-4, my bad. Miami, 4-5. Joel Embiid, 45 points, 16 boards. Tyler Herro had 34, so they got Embiid and Simmons back for this game. So Philadelphia is in good hands now. The Nets over the Nuggets, 122-116. Brooklyn 6-6. Denver 5-6. Kevin Durant, 34 points and 9 boards and 13 assists. He was a rebound shy of a triple-double. Nikola Jokic, 23 points, 8 boards, 11 assists. He was 2 rebounds short of a triple-double. Jazz over the Cavs, 117-87. Utah, 7-4. Cleveland, 5-7. Donovan Mitchell, 27 points. C.D. Osman had 17 with 6 assists. Lakers over the Rockets, 117-100. The Lakers, 9-3. Houston, 3-6. LeBron James, 26 points. Lead the way with his 5 assists. Christian Wood led the Rockets in scoring with 18. Spurs over the Thunder, 112-102. The Spurs, 6-5. Oklahoma City, 5-5. Lonnie Walker led the Spurs in scoring with 24 points. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 20 with 9 boards for Oklahoma City. Pacers over the Warriors, 104-95. The Pacers, 7-4. Golden State, 6-5. Miles Turner had 22 points to lead the Pacers. Andrew Wiggins, 22 to lead Golden State. And Celtics postponed due to COVID issues. Look ahead to today's slate. We have 2 games postponed, the Jazz and the Wizards, and the Magic and the Celtics. Obviously, Jason Tatum has COVID, so it makes sense that Boston's games are getting postponed left and right. And Boston has some other COVID issues as well. So we're down to 8 tonight. 7 o'clock, you have the Mavericks and the Hornets. My projection is Dallas 6, total 216. Meanwhile, it is Dallas 4, total 220. 2-point edge on the Mavs and a 4-point edge on the under. I'm going to take the under 220. Charlotte, to me, is not a good offensive team, so I'm going to take under 220. You have the Bucks and the Pistons. My projection here is Bucks 14, total 228. Meanwhile, it's Bucks 10.5, total 225.5. I'm going to lay the 10.5 in Milwaukee at minus 106. At 7:30, you have the Nets at the Knicks on ESPN. My projection is Brooklyn by 1.5, total 218.5, and that's assuming that Kyrie Irving is not playing. Meanwhile, it's Brooklyn 5.5, total 219. I'm going to take New York plus the 5.5. The Knicks have not played well over their last 3 games, and it looks like that their 5-3 start was a complete aberration. But it's their in-city rival, and I think that New York will come out and play hard. Will they win the game? Maybe. But obviously Kevin Durant, everyone, their brother, thought he was going to the Knicks, so you would expect a big game from him from coming to the Garden, his first game at the Garden as a member of the Brooklyn Nets. But I'm going to take the Knicks plus 5.5 to keep that game close. 8 o'clock, the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. My projection for this game is Minnesota 2, total 220.5. Meanwhile, it is Minnesota 3, total 220. So very close here. with these projections, but I have to take the Grizzlies +3 at -105. I don't like the pick, but that's where I have to go. Lakers and the Thunder, my projections, Lakers 11, total to 17.5. Meanwhile, it's Lakers 9. We don't have a total. I'm going to lay to 9 with the Lakers, assuming that both Davis and LeBron play. Next up, Hawks Suns at 9 o'clock. My projection is Phoenix 4, total to 20.5. Meanwhile, it's Phoenix 5, total to 27.5. I'm taking the under. The Suns have played some good defense this year, and even the Hawks' defense hasn't been all that terrible, so I'm going to go under 227.5. 10 o'clock ESPN, Pelicans Clippers. My projection is Clippers 5, total 218. Meanwhile, it is Clippers 6.5, total 220.5. No choice but to take the under. The case is that the Clippers will play some good defense. New Orleans defense hasn't been a train wreck this year, so I'm going to go under 220.5. And then Portland, Sacramento is the last game on the board for tonight. My line is Portland 3.5, total 234. Meanwhile, it is Portland 4.5, total 235.5. So a 1-point edge on the Kings and a 1.5 edge on the under. I'm going to go with the under. I hate the pick, but that's where I have to go. So give me under 235.5 between the Blazers and the Kings for tonight. Now move on to college basketball. We'll go over a short window for yesterday and another short window of games for today. Buffalo over Western Michigan, 85-69. Northern Illinois over Akron, 67-65. Kent State over Central Michigan, 94-85. UNLV over St. Catherine, 95-34. Alabama State over Mississippi Valley State, 64-51. Number 7, Michigan over number 9, Wisconsin, 77-54. Number 20, Virginia Tech over number 19, Duke, 74-67. St. John's over Butler, 69-57. Boston College over Miami, 84-62. Davidson over St. Joe's, 80-66. Florida over Ole Miss, 72-63. Ball State over Bowling Green, 88-64. Ohio over Miami of Ohio, 78-61. Toledo over Eastern Michigan, 96-63. Oklahoma over TCU, 82-46. Oklahoma State over number 6 Kansas, 75-70. Grambling over Alcorn State, 79-74. North Carolina over Syracuse, 81-75. Marquette over Providence, 79-69. Alabama over Kentucky, 85-65. And USC over UC Riverside, 67-62 in overtime. And now the window for today. First up, 2 o'clock, VCU, George Washington. My line for this is VCU by 10.5. I made some adjustments on how I project the lines now that we are at the halfway point of the season. And my projection is VCU 10.5, total 143.5. So I got a correct line here. I'm going to take the under here. George Washington, to me, is just not a good offensive team. So give me the under 143.5 and the juice number at -115. St. Bonaventure, Fordham. My projection is St. Bonaventure by 11.5. It's St. Bonaventure by 10.5. Total is 124.5. I'm going to take another under. This time at -108. Neither of these teams are very good offensively, especially Fordham. So give me under 125.5 at -104. Furman against the Citadel at 3 o'clock. My projection for this game is Furman by 11. It's Furman by 14.5. Totals 161.5. I'm going to take the Citadel plus the 14.5 at -114. The Citadel's been amazing this season, and I think that they will be competitive at Furman. So give me Citadel plus 14.5 at -115 against Furman. NC Wesleyan against Norfolk State. We could skip. That's a 4 o'clock game. 4:30 at ACC Network. Notre Dame at number 18, Virginia. My projection is Virginia by 17.5. And it is Virginia 9.5. I'm going to lay to 9.5 in Virginia against Notre Dame for that one. And the total of that game is 124.5. 7 o'clock, Big Ten Network, Northwestern at number 21, Ohio State. My projection here is Ohio State by 9. And it is Ohio State by 7.5. Total is 141.5, and I'm going to take the over. Both of these teams have been pretty good offensively, so I'm going to go over 141.5 at -112. I skipped the game. 6:30 ACC Network, NC State against Florida State. My projection here is Seminoles by 3. And it is Seminoles 4.5. Totals 144.5. I'm going to take another. Actually, I almost took the over. I'm going to go with the under. Florida State's defense is pretty good. So I'm going to go under 144.5 at minus 108. Back to 7 o'clock window, Tulsa, Wichita State. My projection here is Wichita State by 1. And it is Wichita by 4.5. So I'm taking Tulsa plus the 4.5 at minus 115. Next up is LaSalle and George Mason. My projection here is George Mason by 1. And it's George Mason 4.5. I'm taking LaSalle plus the 4.5 at minus 110. Duquesne, Dayton on CBS Sports Network. My line here is Dayton 6. And Dayton's favored by 6.5. Totals 133.5. And I'm going to take another Atlantic 10 under. At this time, it's minus 112. So a slight juice there. SEC Network, Auburn, Georgia. My line here is Auburn by 0.5. And it's Georgia by 1.5. So give me Auburn plus 1.5 at minus 112 and plus 102 to win the game straight up. ESPN 2, Arkansas, LSU. My line here is LSU by 4. LSU's favored by 2.5. So it was 159.5. And that's pretty high. But I'm going to take the over at minus 106. Wofford and VMI. My projection here is Wofford by 8. And Wofford's favored by 5.5. I'm going to lay to 5.5 at Wofford at minus 104. Mercer, Chattanooga. My line here is Mercer by 0.5. And it is Mercer by 1.5. So I've jumped to the total. 149.5. And I'm going to take the over 149.5. But I don't feel good about it. And it's juiced at minus 114. 7:30 Nichols, Northwestern State. My projection is Nichols by 8.5. And Nichols is favored by 4.5. So I'm going to lay the 4.5 with Nichols against Northwestern State. Central Arkansas and Stephen F. Austin. My line is Stephen F. Austin by 6. And it's 7.5. Totals 151.5. I'm going to take the over at minus 114. Lamar, Sam Houston State. My projection is Sam Houston State by 10. And it's 8.5. Totals 145.5. And I'm going to take another Southland Conference over. 8 o'clock McNeese, Incarnate Word. My projection here is McNeese by 3.5. And it's McNeese by 1.5. So I'm going to lay to 1.5 at McNeese at even money. A&M, Corpus Christi in Southeast Louisiana. My line here is Corpus Christi by 5. And it's Southeast Louisiana by 1.5. I'm going to take the Corpus Christi plus 1.5 at minus 128. Meanwhile, money lines are even. So minus 108 straight up and plus 1.5 at minus 128. Probably the biggest juice I've seen in a while on a betting site. So the line there is yet to move. Next up, 8:30 ACC Network, number 16 Louisville at Wake Forest. My line here is Louisville 18.5, and it's Louisville by 7.5. I'm going to lay to 7.5 at Louisville at minus 118. Fox Sports 1, DePaul, Georgetown. My line is Georgetown by 1, and it's Georgetown 2.5. Total's 145.5, and I'm going to take under 145.5 at minus 114. 9 o'clock ESPN 2, number 15 Texas Tech at number 4 Texas. My line here is Longhorns by 1.5. And it is Longhorns by 2.5. Total's 133.5. I'm going to take the over 133.5 at minus 112. New Mexico and Dixie State. My projection is New Mexico by 5. And we don't have a lineup for that one yet. I just think New Mexico will win that one on the road. Boise State and Wyoming on CBS Sports Network. My line here is Boise 12. It's Boise 10.5. Total is 145.5. I'm going to take the over 145.5 at minus 114. And the SEC Network, Texas A&M, Mississippi State. My line is Bulldogs 1. It's Bulldogs 5.5. I'm going to take Texas A&M plus a 5.5 at minus 104 as my last pick of the night for college basketball on today's show. Now, we will discuss opening night of the NHL. I'm so fired up for this. The NHL is back, and it's unfortunate that the fans won't be in the stands. And hopefully the league will get to that point soon. 5 games tonight, including a triple header on NBCSN. Since it's opening night, I'm going to pick all 5 games. It's 5:30 NBCSN. You have the Penguins and the Flyers to kick things off. You would expect that this will be Eddie Olczyk, Pierre Maguire, and either Kenny Albert or John Forslund. I don't know on top of my head who's announcing what game, so I'm going to look it up. So I have NBC Sports Group press box open. Doc Emmerich is voicing an opening night tease, which is pretty cool. And it's going to be very interesting. So on the call of the first game of the season between the Flyers and the Penguins, I can't find who is announcing the games. Oh, here we go. Kenny Albert and Pierre Maguire has the first game. So, that's pretty cool. So FanDuel lines. Last I saw it was a pick'em, and Philadelphia has emerged as a minus 120 favorite. Pittsburgh's plus 100 on the money line. Philly puck line is minus 1.5 at plus 240. Pittsburgh puck line plus 1.5 is minus 290. Total 6.5 overs plus 110 unders minus 130. I picked the Flyers to win the division before the year, but I'm taking the Penguins to win on opening night. I think that Crosby and company will be ready to go. I think it's going to be low scoring, maybe like a 3-2 overtime or something like that. I think that sounds realistic. So maybe 4-3. But I'm going to go 3-2 overtime. Crosby with the game winner. Penguins plus 100. 7 o'clock, the Maple Leafs hosting the Canadiens. Maple Leafs minus 140 favorites. Canadiens plus 120. Over under 6.5 at minus 110 each. Maple Leafs puck lines minus 1.5 at plus 180. Montreal plus 1.5 at minus 230. I'm going to take the over 6.5 here as the play here for the game. I just think this is a high-scoring affair. I could see this being a 4-3 game either way. 8 o'clock, NBCSN, you have the Blackhawks and the Lightning. John Forslund, Eddie Olczyk, Brian Boucher on the call. It looks like John Forslund will be the new lead voice on NBCSN this time around. You would have thought it would either be him or Kenny Albert or Mike Tirico. I really thought that Mike Tirico deserved the shot because obviously he was the big hire that NBC had a couple years ago. But that's who I think they're aiming to replace Al Michaels with for football. But I would have loved to see Mike Tirico get an opportunity too. But John Forslund's a solid announcer. So it looks like he's the replacement for Doc Emmerich long term. Unless it is Kenny Albert and they're just putting Eddie Olczyk on this game because the Blackhawks are there. But Brian Boucher did a majority of games with Doc Emmerich and Edzo last year. But the Stanley Cup final was Pierre Maguire, if I'm not mistaken. So they really have broken them up in the regular season. And then they would obviously reunite for the playoffs. It's similar to how the NBA has done it with Mike Breen, Mark Jackson, and Jeff Van Gundy. Like, they put them together for ABC games in the regular season, but the ESPN games, they split them up unless it's like a monster game. Like, the game, that first Laker game after Kobe died, they obviously had to put them together, but that was for obvious reasons. But yeah, and then they would reunite those three for the postseason. So maybe Kenny Albert did get the gig, but it looks like it's John Forslund. but we'll see. But that's a good game. Chicago, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay minus 250. Plus 210. The Blackhawks straight up. Over under 6.5 overs. Plus 100. Under minus 120. Tampa puck line is minus 1.5 at plus 110, and Chicago puck line plus 1.5 at minus 130. So the pick here, I'm going to go with another over. I think that this is a shootout. I think Tampa could put up 5, and then Chicago could put up like 2 or 3. And I am not a fan of Malcolm Subban, so that's an automatic over for me. 10 o'clock, you have Vancouver at Edmonton. Edmonton's minus 130, Vancouver's plus 110. Over under 6.5, unders minus 120, overs plus 100, so even money. Oilers puck line is minus 1.5 at plus 210, and Vancouver puck line is plus 1.5 at minus 250. I'm going to go with the over again. I think goaltending is an issue for potentially both teams, but more so Edmonton than Vancouver. Vancouver straight up a plus 110 is enticing too, but I'm going to take the over 6.5 plus 100 to play it safe. And last but not least, the Blues and the Avalanche, 10:30 NBCSN on the call. This one, Brendan Burke and AJ Malesko. Avalanche are minus 145. St. Louis is plus 125. Total is 5.5. The under is plus 110. The over is minus 130. Avs puck line minus 1.5 is plus 190. And Blues is plus 1.5 at minus 230. Great game to start the year in the nightcap of the NBCSN triple header. This is tough. This is the toughest call on the board. And you know, guys, I like to go for value. And I think there's some value on the over at minus 130. I know it's very juiced, but if this goes up to 6, I'd still take the over. I think this is a 4-3 game, and I think the Avalanche will win it. So give me Avs 4-3. I like the over 5.5. And by the way, straight up pick for Blackhawks Lightning, obviously Tampa Bay. And then the underdog, I think they'll win outright. I think Pittsburgh and maybe Vancouver. You know what? I'm going to say Vancouver wins, but I feel better about the over. And by the way, Pittsburgh went from plus 100 to minus 105, so they are now a slight underdog at Philly, and that might end up going back. That might end up going back to a pick'em. Now I will preview tonight's episode of The Masked Dancer. This is the 3rd episode of the series. So it looks like that tonight we will see a second look at the Group A. Actually, no. It's the Group B finals where they so we're gonna have Group B back. So that's going to be very interesting. The Group B finals. So somebody's going home, and then they'll probably have a group combined with the two, which will probably be their version of the Super Six. So Group B returns. So you have the Sloth, who hinted about being a Mickey Mouse operation. A bad accident. This person's a doctor. There's a Glee clue. A 13 cup. There's toothpaste in there. There's a jungle. The person performed What I Like About You by the Romantics. And there's a workout in the routine, and there's a cup in there as well. And his word up was Broadway, and my guess, Kevin McHale. And Paula Abdul went with another Glee star, Matthew Morrison. Brian Austin Green went with Kevin Farrelly, and Ashley Tisdale went with Jason Derulo, which would be a big get for the Masked franchise. Zebra had an old school car. Someone hasn't been seen in a while. A red car. One Direction was a hint. Maybe they had some involvement with them. Then there's a hint, DEC 154128. And they performed Magdalena by Sergio Mendes. And his word up was comeback. And I thought about Joey McIntyre of New Kids on the Block. There are some New Kids hints in there, so I decided to go with Joey McIntyre. Brian Austin Green went with Ricky Martin. And Ken Jeong went with Kevin Richardson of the Backstreet Boys. Cotton Candy was somebody that is tiny, someone that's a perfectionist. There's Wizards in there. There was Bird that said B exclamation point RD. And then there's capital letters F, E, and E, like separated, the word fee, but all separate. And then this person fell in the rehearsal, obviously, and obviously Fox kept teasing that. And then this performance was dedicated to someone very important in the envelope that was in the clue package. And this performer performed the routine to Glitter in the Air by Pink. And then it was very similar to Pink's Grammy performance back in 2010. And her word was prime time. And this made me think of Julianne Hough of Dancing with the Stars. And I think that this would be a good get. And obviously, Dancing with the Stars is recorded in the same studio or the same complex as the Masked franchise shows. And obviously, Dancing with the Stars is in primetime. Paula went with Jenna Dewan. Ken Jeong and Ashley Tisdale both went with Julianne Hough. And Brian Austin Green went with Pink. Miss Moth, there was a hint about the White House, out of the view public. There's a closed box. Yellow Leaves, thrives in the spotlight. There's a cactus, and this person performed Boot Scoot and Boogie by Brooks and Dunn. And then her word up was inspired. I thought about Ivanka Trump because there are hints about involvement with the president and in the White House. There's other people that this could potentially be that are involved in politics as well. Ashley Tisdale went with Megyn Kelly. Paula and Brian both said Monica Lewinsky. And then Paula also went with Marla Maples because Maples was married to Donald Trump. The contestant that went home last week was Ice Cube. They hinted about the White House as well. There's a TV. Corn Liblets, someone that's lonely, someone that had a slippery road. Maybe this person is from somewhere in the cold. And they performed Bad Romance by Lady Gaga. And there were science hints as well. And there were money, obviously bills. There was ballroom dancing in this routine. There was a castle. And the word up was a 90s icon. I thought this was Anderson Cooper. So did Paula Abdul. And then that wasn't her final guess, though. Paula's final guess was Tim Dunn. And her question was, if this person had a speck of white hair, and this person said maybe. Brian's final question was, is this a TV person? Yes. And his final guess was Bill Murr. Ashley Tisdale asked about a huge social media presence, and this person said yes. Her final guess was Al Gore. Ken Jeong asked about comedy, and the person said yes. And his guess was Bill Nye the Science Guy. And who was it? Bill Nye the Science Guy. Ken Jeong, the first panelist to get a masked dancer correct on the show. So that's good for Ken Jeong. And in terms of my prediction of who goes home tonight, I'm going to say Miss Moth goes home. And I'm going to say Ivanka Trump. And I think that's only fitting because, obviously, of what's going on in Washington. So, Ivanka Trump, I'm going to say, ends up in the Miss Moth costume and gets voted off tonight. Before I do Best Bet, now I'm going to get into the possible impeachment of the president. This is a huge deal in our nation, so I want to briefly touch on this because we could be potentially seeing history today. The House is poised to move forward with an impeachment vote against Trump, and how the House formally calls on Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment to strip power from the president. And it looks like that Pence wrote a letter to Nancy Pelosi. We don't know exactly what it said. I think that there's a chance that Pence rejects it and Trump remains in the White House for another week before President-elect Biden is sworn in. And there are some Republicans actually support impeaching the president. And Pelosi named 9 Democrats to lead the impeachment effort. The Census Bureau, facing pressure from Trump to release the premature figures, pushed back. And then the YouTube suspended Trump's channel for at least 7 days. The Pentagon will arm National Guards troops deploying to the Capitol for inauguration. So there are some huge subplots to this as well. And the vote will go on at 9 o'clock this morning. So obviously we will open tomorrow's show with the outcome of this story. Now I'm going to do my best bet of the day, brought to you by FanDuel. There's some interesting picks that I threw out on the show, but I can only pick one, obviously. And the one I'm going to roll with is going to be in college basketball. I'm going to lay the 7.5 with Louisville against Wake Forest. I know it's a juice number at -118, so I'm going to pay a little extra here. So give me Louisville -7.5 against Wake Forest. So there you have it. Tomorrow we'll discuss the decision that the White House will come up with to open up the show tomorrow, and we'll recap the Masked Dancer. We'll recap NHL opening night, NBA, college basketball, and look ahead to tomorrow's games in each of those sports and any other news in the world of sports or pop culture I'll have for you as well. Hope you guys have a great day, everyone.